Hey, so guys, Roxall here, and in this video I'm going to be going over every creature change in ARK Survival Ascended from ARK Survival Evolved I can find. Mainly doing this out of my own curiosity, but also of course so you know what creatures actually got changed on the switch to the remaster. A few quick notes before we begin. First, know that every creature that isn't mentioned here I could not find changes on, and these are dinos only going up to the most recently released map, the center. I also will not be mentioning the ASA exclusive dinos, as this is just a video comparing the changes they did on the switch over. That's pretty much everything, so let's begin by doing this in alphabetical order. First off, we got the Arthropleura, and this guy got a small but I would still say pretty significant change of no longer having points into its oxygen stat. This means those points will go into other stats now, which makes them a lot stronger foe in the wild, and a solid tame to use in general. Next up, the Beelzebufo now has a more vertical hitbox with its tongue swings, so it makes it easier to hit things like Meganeura. This I would say makes them an even better tame to use for the swamp cave now. The Carbonemys is one of the tank creatures that got big buffs in ASA, specifically to its damage reduction. Normally the turtle only makes projectiles do 80% less damage to its shell and 50% to its tail, but now in ASA those damage reductions apply to normal melee attacks. This makes them a much tougher foe to take down on land on top of their high base health. For the Carcharodontosaurus, this is a small change but pretty significant that it now drops Giga Hearts in ASA. If you don't know already, you need 2 Giga Hearts for the Alpha Dragon, and taking Gigas down can be a pretty tough challenge. However, with Carchars dropping them upon death now, it becomes a lot easier, as Carchars are a lot weaker overall with no bleed and less damage unless it's in Frenzy. I've also found that these guys in Gigas will spawn directly in the volcano in ASA, which makes them super easy to kill if you lead them straight into the lava. Ah, how the mighty have fallen, you stupid stinking jellyfish. First off, Cnidaria seem to spawn a lot less frequently in ASA compared to ASE, and also seem to no longer spawn in groups at all. On top of the spawn nerfs, there's now a diminished CC effect that got added to ASA that makes it impossible for the Cnidaria to chain CC you. I've had way too many bad experiences with these stupid things in ASE, so I tip my hat to you ARK devs on this one. Next, we got a pretty massive change to what was already a pretty handy creature, the Dung Beetle. If you don't know already, these guys can auto-turn feces into fertilizer as long as they are set to wander. Now in ASA, though, they auto-collect feces in the area, even beyond their weight stat. This means you can get so much fertilizer for your crops easily without having to put in much work yourself. This auto-grab range seems to scale with the melee damage stat too, if you didn't know already. For the Dunkleosteus, this isn't a direct change, but definitely makes it more useful, that being underwater resources being more common on the island. These guys can pick a lot of those up and have some solid weight, so definitely don't neglect these guys if you are low on resources. The giant queen bee is a weird one where a major bug got fixed with them for single player people, but another one may have been introduced for everybody. Classic ASA. The bug that got fixed is one where if you ever loaded a save in single player in ASE, all the hives would just get destroyed and bees wouldn't ever spawn again. This luckily got fixed in ASA, but now there's this weird bug that happens where queen bees will just spawn with no hives in certain areas. No idea if this is intentional or not, but the wiki says it happens on every map that's currently out. Next up, we got our first scorch creature, the Jerboa, where they now spawn at normal levels instead of just being level 1 like ASE. They also seem to be a bit bugged out though in ASA for me, doing weather calls for a storm that doesn't happen. Kairuku spawns seem to have changed in ASA as well, at least on single player. They no longer spawn like crazy on the icebergs anymore, but instead just spawn on the north side of the island with everything else. No clue if this is intentional or some kind of single player bug. Next up, we got a nice little buff to the Capro, where its oxygen stat no longer gets points into it since it doesn't use it. This, just like the Arthropleura I mentioned before, is great for breeding, and making them stronger in general as those points get allocated to other stats. Back on Scorched Earth, our Morellatops friend got a nice addition to its water collection abilities. Now if he has water stored, he will automatically irrigate nearby crops. You can also move that water into a nearby storage tank if needed as well. Onyx got a much needed change where if you whistle land flyer, they'll actually land on the ground now. In ASE, for some reason, they just did this little weird flip and wouldn't really land. Many guess this was teasing a future feature where they could hang from the ceiling, but it never came to be. The Oviraptor got a huge change where it can now pick up nearby domesticated eggs along with wild ones. On top of the normal breeding buff to females they give, this makes them a great use for normal breeding / kibble farming. Also, just like the Dung Beetle, the eggs will continue to be collected past its weight. Something that is weirdly different from the Dung Beetle though, is that its range is buffed by its overall level instead of leveling melee in particular. Pachys have always had this hard noggin that reduced incoming projectile damage by 87.5%. However, in ASA, they now can block all melee damage from the front by this percentage, which is quite a hefty damage reduction. It is of course balanced by their lower overall health pool, but with some levels and mutations, they can become quite the beefy little tanks. Pachyrhinosaurus is in a similar business, with their head reducing all incoming melee damage now by 85% instead of just projectiles. Makes them also pretty tanky now. A small but much needed buff was given to the Phoenix, where it can now actually land and take off in ARK Survival Ascended when tamed, which you couldn't do before. In ASE, that dude just wanted to hover for some reason. The Rhyniognatha got a very interesting change where its drag weight actually got reduced all the way to 180 from 410. This makes it so you can actually carry these guys with Argies now. Rhinos can also carry these guys, and they are next up on our list for changes. They got some fat nerfs mainly moving from ASE to ASA. I'm guessing it's mainly due to PvP reasons, but I'm not a PvP player myself, so I don't know for sure. First significant change was a base health nerf from 1400 all the way down to 900, and then a weight nerf from 1200 to 1100. Its movement speed while carrying creatures got reduced by 50%, and it no longer can impregnate your dino while it's trapped. Some crazy hard nerfs to this thing here, so the devs did seem to give it some compensation buffs to its armor with higher damage reductions. Next up, we got a pretty nice buff to the rock elemental where it can now move in any direction. On top of this, it also got its oxygen stat removed, which, just like I mentioned with the Capro and Arthro, is great for breeding and overall base stats. The Spino interestingly got a shadow nerf to its swing speed, where now it's slower swinging in its bipedal stance. I call it a shadow nerf as it wasn't mentioned at all in the patch notes from what I've seen. This makes them significantly weaker than before, as this attack is their main DPS move. Not a fan of this one personally, as they're already outclassed by Rexes in most scenarios. This just makes the gap between them even bigger. Triceratops, just like its other armored friends, gets that 85% damage reduction applied to normal melee attacks in the front now. And the final small one I've noticed myself for Wyverns is that their egg spawns on Scorch seemed a lot more consistent than they used to be. Still infrequent spawns in general, but more consistent, which I like. What I mean by this is that when there is a Wyvern, there's a high probability it has the egg now nearby, which I couldn't really say before. And there we go. That's all the significant creature changes I could find in this current version of the game. Besides the Oviraptor and Dung Beetle automation changes, nothing too crazy here I would say. Some decent changes and some kind of weird ones like that Spino nerf. On the first switch over to ASA, I was really hoping some of the weaker / niche creatures would get some TLCs. The Oviraptor is the only creature that seemed to get changed to an actual use of dino from a useless one, but I was really hoping for some more personally. Like, let's take the Mosasaur for example. This guy's been getting worse and worse for me as the years go on, to be honest. Especially with the recent addition of the Zivactinus, which feels like it outclasses the Mosasaur in every way with how good its abilities are. The Mosasaur has decent speed in the water, but it has this abysmal turn radius which makes it feel impossible to attack things. The bite itself does decent damage, but when you can barely even hit it, there really isn't a point. It doesn't have any unique effects or abilities attached to it either, just a simple bite. Mosasaur gets rolled when there is a single eel around, as their stun makes it do less damage while being impossible for the Mosasaur to hit. It's even more instant death if a single jellyfish shows up. I really think they should make the Mosasaur the Giga of the ocean given its size and all. Like maybe give it the ability to sort of snap back in the water similar to the Sarco, and give it another attack of some kind bound to right click, as it doesn't have anything there right now. The Mosasaur has a massive tail, but some kind of tail whip in the water would be pretty cool I think. There's much more things you could do too, like change its taming method and such, but that's not what this video is about, so I won't go too in depth here. There's also just a bunch of other creatures that deserve changes too, like the Bronto, Aranio, and Carno, just to name a few. That's all just my thoughts on the creatures in ARK Ascended as a PvE player though. You can let me know yours in the comments. Also let me know if I missed any changes, as these were kind of difficult to find on its own, which makes it very likely I missed something. Thank you all for the support as always, and I'll see you all in the next one. Peace.
Rock skull, rock skull. All I want to do is stream all night. Lobby full, rock skull. Never gonna play with me, but it's alright.